Is product the new misused Agile term? Is what I want to talk about today. I will try to keep my Americanisms in check because I am notorious for using a lot of slang. So I will try to be good. The background I have is in software development. I did used to write code. I did used to administer databases. I fell into project management, but you'll see on my biography there, you no longer see project management professional because I made the brave decision in February to let it go. I decided I use Scrum. I am a certified LESS practitioner. This is the way I choose to do work. Why am I sending the Project Management Institute money every year? It didn't make any sense. So it was very freeing. But I do speak project management. So don't assume I don't know the waterfall ways. I just am recovering from my waterfall hangover and decided to go all the way and not pay them money anymore. But I am in Minneapolis, Minnesota in the United States. So as I mentioned, I will try to keep my Americanisms in check. But I think one phrase that's universal that we all may be tired of hearing is, we're going Agile. What does that even mean? I mean, where are you going? So we hear this from buzzword compliant managers. I think there's some secret certification for leaders out there where they go get certified in buzzword compliance because they use all these words: Agile, Scrum, DevOps, Lean, Velocity, and more importantly, they misuse them. And in trying to educate, because I consider myself an educator, in the last year, I have found myself using two phrases over and over again. The first one is, you're on mute. The second one is this one. You keep using that word. I don't think it means what you think it means. And I'm finding myself saying that in response to product. A lot of organizations, a lot of leaders are saying things like, we need to adopt the product paradigm. We need to take a product focus. Oh my gosh, yes, that speaks my language. I'm so excited to help you with that. And then imagine, my bubble bursts, my air goes out of my balloon when I realize they're just misusing product now too. So do they really mean project or do they really mean product? And it doesn't matter if you look at something like the project management body of knowledge, all 1,000 pages of it or whatever it's up to these days, or if you just look at dictionary.com. The very simple definition of the word project is that it's temporary. By definition, it has a start, it has an end. People are assigned temporarily, usually by singular skill set. And we guess, dictionary.com defines the word estimate as guess. We guess at the time and money, and then we lock our guesses down with a plan. And we start working. And lo and behold, change happens. But in the project paradigm, we discourage change. No. Can't have change. And as the end date looms, people panic because they want to make the date. We don't want to cut scope because that'll tick our customers off. So people start cutting corners, hack solutions, hard-coded values, missed tests or scenarios, and the project is over. And now we hand the deliverable, which might be the product, it gets handed over to a support team. Where's the project team? They are disbanded, dispersed, and assigned to new projects. And the poor people in support who are talking to the real customer saying, I don't know what happened here. I'm going to need some time. I'm going to need to dive into it. And the people who made these decisions, who gave us these hack solutions, cut corners, they have been completely absolved of any responsibility because they're now off on a new project, in many ways making the same mistakes on new stuff. So the product paradigm takes a completely different view. And the product paradigm is what frameworks such as Scrum and large-scale Scrum are all about. It's not about project. It's about taking the paying customer's point of view and looking at the product. So back to that definition, products are grown, products are produced, products are generally sold. So a paying customer sees the product. Now, how we internally at our companies decide to align, well, that's where we're getting into this project or product. Because traditionally, if your company has projectized, they may have aligned by systems, by activity. They may have segregated people by activity and taken a project point of view. Well, the product point of view requires us to restructure, to put dedicated teams of people focused on the product for the good of the customer. And anything the customer tells us is just feedback. It's just work we need to do. So let's say the customer experiences a bug or some kind of defect. Well, it just comes back to the product backlog. It just comes back to the to-do list and gets ordered in relation to everything else. So now the team isn't absolved of what they did here. They're held accountable to the error of their ways. And not only do they fix the issue for the customer, they can get to root cause of what in their process is creating this issue for the customer in the first place. In many ways, it's almost unfair to compare something like project management to something like Scrum in the product paradigm, because project management is a methodology. It is a process. The product paradigm is more of a framework. The Scrum framework offers guidelines, but leaves it up to the Scrum team to come up with the process that makes sense for this particular product. And for years, it drove me crazy because as I was recovering from project management, and I had my aha moment about product, a number of my colleagues didn't share the same view. They were trying to take these scrummy ideas and shove them into the project structure. And it's rarely effective. So what does the customer think? We're all customers. I mean, we pay money for products and services. And a phrase that struck me, and this is back in 2011 when I met Stephen Denning initially, is he said, the new goal for the organization must be to delight the customer. Now, some of you may know Stephen Denning from his newer book, Age of Agile. The initial book where I was introduced to his work was Leader's Guide for Radical Management. And he was talking about the customer, the customer, the customer. And I thought, amen, right? Hallelujah. This person gets paying customers and we need to delight them, because if we don't, they vote with their feet and more importantly, their wallet. And in this day and age, they don't stop there. They go on social media and tell everybody else what crap products you have, what lame services you have. So Agile and Scrum aren't the goal. Achieving whatever our goals are, delighting our customers, is what this is all about. Agile and Scrum is just a way to do that. So what do your customers see as the product? The one in the middle is near and dear to my heart. I'm going to not say the large United States financial institution's name, but we have voted with our feet and our wallets at my organization. And this has nothing to do with COVID times. It has nothing to do with the bank falling on hard times or anything like that. This has to do with them not understanding customers. When I call up the bank, and this is before COVID, like I said, every time we had a problem, the people on the phone would say things to us, if we were lucky enough to get a human on the phone, they would say things to us like, you don't understand the way our back end is set up. I'm going to need to check with the front end department. That's not my department. You don't get how our back end works. I don't care about your back end. I didn't call today to find out how your back end is. I'm the paying customer. I called with a problem. So now if you have some sort of internal challenge, that's not my deal. That's yours. And the other use of the phrase they, them. So I asked, You keep saying that word. You keep saying they. Who are you talking about? Oh, another department, those people. It sounds to me like that company, that bank, is not interested in me as a paying customer. They are interested in fighting each other. They're more interested in how they're going to be able to communicate and work together in that organization. So customers will leave if you don't delight them. So now let me flip it around to students, potential customers who call us up and say, we want help changing the way we do work. We're all about product paradigm. We're headed to product. I got very excited recently about a very large grocery chain in the United States who called us up and asked for help. And they said, we are so passionate about product. We have appointed a chief product officer, and we would like you to start the conversation with this person to see how you can help us take a product point of view. Wow. Got excited, got on the call, got to meet this executive, and I had a lot of questions. So I asked this person, newly appointed chief product officer, because they kept saying that to me. What did you do before? Are you new to the organization? Oh, no. I've been with the organization for a while. What was your title before? Chief technology officer. He says, first red flag. Second red flag. The person that he asked to join us on the call was the director of the project management office. And as we started talking about paying customers, they kept correcting me, talking about internal customers and applications. And I was trying to do more fact finding than educating since it was our initial call. But in my brain, I'm going, there's no such thing as an internal customer. People pay you money. They're your customers. Now, that's not to say that there aren't applications inside the company, but the people using that software are users of those applications. And as we continued our conversation, the PMO leader, the project management office, kept butting in and saying, now remember, this all needs to fit into our existing project management metrics. This all needs to work with our existing project management templates and tools and paradigm. And I'm thinking, okay, why do you even want to do this? So I bravely ask, I'm hearing a lot of project management terms. So why do you want to use Scrum? Why are you trying to change to more of a product focus? Well, we need to be able to deliver. We need to be able to deliver more readily. We need to be able to adapt. If we're not willing to make some of these structural changes, I ventured, that's probably not going to happen. And the executive says, oh, well, we don't really want to make structural changes. We're having a great year. Numbers are up. The stakeholders are happy. We don't want to rock that boat. And I'm thinking to myself, oh, your numbers are up. You own grocery stores in the middle of a global pandemic. Duh. I mean, people need to eat. I'll tell you why your numbers are up. And it has nothing to do with your project management view of the world. So it sounded to me like this buzzword compliant leader just wants to say product, 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 but really keep using project management. So I invited them to talk to a competitor because I wasn't interested in beating my head against the wall. And the other word that they kept misusing, of course, is scaling, talking about how big it all was. Well, the reality is, if we're going to take a product point of view, specifically the one that Scrum embraces, if you can't Scrum, you can't scale. So if we don't understand Scrum 101, there is no use in trying to make it bigger. So I met this guy, I met Craig Larman in the year 2015. And in venturing into one of the first certified LESS practitioner courses that was being held, this was an initial rollout Craig was doing in the United States, I thought, yes, oh my gosh, speak in my language, right? Product, product, product. And it's in violent agreement with Scrum. So there are ways to take this larger in an organization. It just involves following the same rules. So in embracing large-scale Scrum and helping organizations identify product, there's some tips we can borrow not only from large-scale Scrum, but from Scrum 101 or from the Scrum Guide as well. Now, if you got a really big product and we've got multiple teams of developers, that doesn't mean product owner per team. I was talking yesterday to a graduate of mine who said, well, we're a year into our less adoption. Well, that's exciting. Talk to me about that. Let's find out a little bit more about that. And he starts talking about team product owners. So that's not a less adoption. Let's back way up and talk about what your product is, because product owners are identified based on how we identify product. Having team product owners or some sort of team backlog reduces overall transparency. It reduces overall focus on the product. It actually increases your complexity. And you'll hear that when people talk about too many dependencies, or the phrase I hear, waiting on another Scrum team. That doesn't sound right. So it really inhibits the agility of the teams, their ability to pivot, agility. So we want to identify the product based on how our customers see the product. And the Scrum Guide offers a key scaling rule. If you're going to go big, shared product goal, shared product backlog, product owner, multiple teams of developers pulling from that product backlog, because those teams are going to be cross-functional, just like a singular Scrum team would be. The new Scrum Guide that was updated in November of 2020 added a couple of clarifications that I'm a big fan of, because I'll hear people talking about a team that has multiple products. And as I start asking more questions, they really mean project. When they're talking about, a bug fix for this application, a piece of work for this other application that has nothing to do with this application. And that's not product, that's projects. So the Scrum Guide further offers us that the Scrum team must fulfill this particular product goal or objective before moving on to another one. The nice thing is they also acknowledge it could be abandoned, because if we decide to just scrap the idea and not pursue it anymore, that's fine too. I mean, that's an outcome that could happen. But products aren't always things, you can touch. Products aren't always things you can hold or feel. Like if I try to make a call, hopefully I have airtime. Hopefully I have service on this device. So I pay for that service, but I'm not walking around going, look at my coverage. Maybe if I look here and see if I have bars or not on this device, I could see that. But products can be services. They can be physical or something more abstract. So it's generally a good idea to ask the customers what they think the product is. So that makes a lot of sense if your company is offering its services or giving physical, selling physical, growing physical products. But maybe the practical place for a company to start, if they have fallen down the waterfall pretty hard, is with some sort of internal initiative that ultimately serves the paying customer. Maybe you call that group IT, information technology, systems development. And true project development does exist. And I work with a number of organizations that perform external work for hire to a client, web developers, SEO development services, marketing agencies. So if they're doing true project development, of course, there's a start and an end. Now, there may be some things they have to support or for a period of time, but it's not like that external customer stays engaged with that services firm indefinitely. They may come back to them as they have new needs or need to be contracted again. But project development can still use Scrum if that external services organization is focused on that one external client. So to make sure that we understand these terms, it's not that projects completely go away. They just very definitionally have a start and an end. So let's look at the ideal product definition. And these are some of the questions you can use to ask. Who are the actual customers? What does the customer see as the product? What are they paying for? I always like to say, follow the money, right? Follow the money. Who's paying for this? And now at this broad level, if you hear things like, well, this other department, we're not going far enough. So broad questions. Another example I like to ask students or customers, in addition to who's paying the money, let's use a lot of examples people can relate to. So an example I ask people about is healthcare, which is top of mind for a lot of people. Do you pay for your healthcare? Well, no, my employer does. Well, do you pay a portion? Do you have a copay? Yes. Well, what are you paying for? Well, my coverage, the promise to pay if I get sick, the service. Okay. So as a healthcare company, if they're busy talking about back end, UI, wireframe department, testing department, that's not taking a product view to serve you as the paying customer. Likewise with your phone service. If you didn't have coverage or there was a glitch in your coverage and you called for service and they started talking to you about all kinds of mechanical and technical things, that doesn't delight customers. So we want to make sure if we're using the broad questions and we're willing in the organization to restructure this way, that we get down to what the external customer sees. What's the problem we're trying to solve for them? Generally, in my experience, when I have used these broadening questions and it's been met with success, like an organization saying, oh my gosh, this makes so much more sense. Yes, let's realign by product. In my experience, that has happened with smaller, privately held companies. And by small, I mean anywhere from 150 people to a couple thousand people. And generally speaking, they've been privately held because the leaders are able to make decisions. They don't have to go check with a board of directors. They don't have to go ask for permission. Now, when you get into larger organizations, and I mean thousands and thousands of people, maybe even tens of thousands of people, where the products are huge, like healthcare, like any kind of insurance, the broadening questions don't make sense to some of the people working in those organizations because they only have a small piece of that overall pie. So we can take some narrowing questions to start to figure out where to begin. If organizations had restructured by singular activity, you'll hear them talk about, well, we have a development environment. Well, we have a quality assurance environment. We get to integration 2 or 3 environments later. That's a sign that they've made the structural changes, not just with their people, but with their technology as well. So you start talking about broadening questions and you watch their eyes glaze over because they think that is an impossibility for us to start making these changes. So narrowing questions in those environments can really help because the old adage I hear people use, if you're going to boil the ocean, you're just going to get dead fish. So we're not trying to do that. We're not trying to do big bang. We're not going to try to do everything at once. So a practical product definition may mean that we have to start asking, okay, here's the end customer. We figured out who that person is, but now let's walk back and talk about what is within this company that is ultimately serving that end customer. And you may get an answer like this particular department, this particular piece of software, or this application, or this process. Okay, are these applications, are these processes or pieces of software, who's using them? Who are the people using them? Find out what's within their control. Because if there's somebody who does have control over that application or piece of software, you may choose to start there by identifying that as our product or identifying that person who has authority as our product owner. Can we state a clear goal? If we're able to state a clear goal for that product, this may be our practical place to start. Now, what I put in bold there often gets overlooked. Committing to continuous improvement. And the reason I mention that is I'm all for the practical place to start. I get it. But what can happen is that becomes the new status quo. And I've seen that happen with a couple of our customers. We have a customer in the United States who makes windows. Pretty obvious what the product is. I'm even one of their customers. They make windows. And I heard that excuse early on that it was too overwhelming. We need a practical place to start. And this is a huge operation. Well, great. I'm all for it. Let's do it. Let's start here. Here we are 5 years later, that exact same structure and the exact same excuses are coming up. So they haven't continuously improved. They haven't continued to challenge the status quo. And recently, when it got ridiculously cold here in Minnesota, and by ridiculously cold, and I'm going to express this in Fahrenheit, I mean like 20 to 30 below zero Fahrenheit. I heard a bang, like a gunshot had gone off in my house. And it's like, what the heck? One of those windows cracked all the way up the middle. Oh my gosh. And so in calling support, it was kind of cool because they had me turn on the camera from my phone and then share the camera and they could see it. And they're like, yep, that's a stress fracture. Well, great. What are we going to do about it? I got handed off to one department after the other. I got told, well, this department's going to record it. You're going to get a call from this other department who's going to schedule it. And in trying to even follow up on the appointment, nope, I can't answer that for you. I'm going to have to get you to another person, another department. And in my head, I'm thinking, wow, the last 5 years, you've really committed to continuous improvement, huh? No, they were so happy that they could call one of those systems or one of those pieces of application and the people using it, product owner, product and Scrum, that they stopped right there. So it's not that these things are bad or good. It's just, are you delighting your customers or not? Are you achieving the company's goals and objectives or not? Because there's no value in going agile. I mean, that's not your goal. The goal is committing to delivery of value to our customers so that they don't vote with their feet in their wallet. So that's the big risk with the product practical definition, is it becomes the new status quo, and changing for the better just stops. Now, in choosing the narrowing definition, the other thing that has to happen is we have to understand that we're still talking about structural change and behavioral change. The product paradigm requires structural change and behavioral change from the project paradigm. So if we identify the practical place to start, let's just say it's pretty software centric. Let's just say, for the example I have on the screen here, that it's a piece of software, it's an application. We might have some user interface or some UI. Sure, probably have some code, probably got database tables or a data layer. If you have a separate group who has been performing testing or integrating pieces of code, we need to bust up that structure. We need to take cross-functional skills and put them on a Scrum team so that we can deliver a working slice of product increment with every single sprint. So the narrowing questions may get some organizations relieved that they can just start by calling this application a product. But we also want to make sure they understand we're still talking about change. We're still talking about structural change and behavioral change. Because if they say, well, no, that UI team is going to be a Scrum team, that code team, they're going to be a Scrum team, and the database folks are going to be a Scrum team, and so on. Those are component teams. We're not likely to deliver value any more readily than by having the project paradigm. So people are just calling these Scrum teams product teams, but not actually behaviorally changing or structurally changing. Excuse me. So the narrowing questions is a practical place to start, requires those two things. Change the structure, cross-functional teams, dedicate them to one product. Or maybe you call that ordering their work. So form the teams, dedicate the product, or order their work. Those are the two things at a minimum that have to happen. So changing for the better. Kaizen, I'm sure some of you have heard that phrase. And in the spirit of Kaizen or changing for the better, ask, are we meeting goals and objectives? Are we delivering value to paying customers? Are we delighting the customers? Or are they voting with their feet in their wallets? Go out to social media and see what they're saying about your products or services, right? Because if we're not making them happy, they will let everybody know about it. And I have saved a lot of time for some dialogue, for some Q&A. So I'm going to rely on Tomek to help me with that. Tomek, do you have a couple of questions queued up?
With you, I have few questions, so I hope I will get a few more. Again, a reminder that we have a Slido for that. So I get two questions regarding the transferring from the project world to the product approach. I'm going to start with the first one. So the question is, what was the main trigger or triggers that push you from project to product approach? It's kind of interesting question. So
the main triggers that pushed me?
Yes.
From project to product?
Yeah.
I can tell you the very last waterfall project that I ever worked on. And some people who know me know that my background is largely in Oracle, ERP systems. So I'm really big stuff. And it was largely for retailers. So it's now Oracle Retail. And I had fallen into project management. The company thought that I'd make a great project manager because I understood the Oracle development practices. I understood the database lingo, all that happy stuff. Fine. So we did a 6-month fixed bid project for one of our retail clients. And we were supposed to put through a lot of real-time point of sale changes, which now is cutting edge stuff, but this is over 15 years ago, right? We got to get back in my time machine and go back 15 years here. And as the project manager, I kept being called a good project manager because we were on time, perfectly within scope and within budget. And we invited the client into our office for user acceptance testing, right? Good project manager. And as they start running their test scripts, they sit down and start executing those. I hear one of them start laughing. And I'm like, oh God, this can't be good. So I ask her, why are you laughing? And she grabs the requirements document, a lot thicker than this. And she says, that is my signature. It is. But reading it 6 months later with fresh eyes, I totally see how you folks misinterpreted this, but we can't use any of this. Project really green? No. Red, red, red. And then, of course, the boss screaming and yelling at me, screaming and yelling at the team. You stay till midnight. You get this done. And I'm like, this sucks. There's just got to be a better way. And when I found Agile, my first Agile experience immediately after that wasn't even Scrum. It was an extreme programming initiative that a local financial company was experimenting with. And I checked that out because I had left the Oracle organization. And in my brain, it was just like common sense. I don't even like to call myself a CST certified Scrum trainer. I'm a common sense trainer. CST stands for common sense trainer. So that's what sent me over the edge from project. Because think about it. If it was a product paradigm and we were taking that customer's point of view, we wouldn't have waited 6 months. Why couldn't we have checked in with them after, I don't know, 2 weeks and said, hey, are we headed in the right direction? Let's check in after another 2 weeks and so on. But it was embarrassing. And I just did not want to be in that situation again. So that's my project horror story.
So you mean that was unbudgeted and on time and there was no bonuses?
No, Tomek, the bonus was giving up our free time to stay nights and weekends.
Oh, that's cool. we have this plan at T-Mobile, by the way here. All right. So there's another question which is kind of related to this one. If there is dimension where the project is better than product.
There is, because for a lot of colleagues that I know from the project world, they'll get equally as passionate about project management, right? I mean, a lot of us in the Scrummy world get kind of excited about this because we've made our choice and we're passionate about it. And I've had some of my colleagues talk about really excellent projects they've been on. And when you look at the problems they were trying to solve, were simple. They weren't complicated or complex. There was a high degree of known answers. Well, okay, if you're in an environment where the problem you're trying to solve is simple, there's a high degree of known answers that aren't disputed. Honestly, any approach might be effective. The project approach might work just great because it assumes not only that you know the answers at the beginning, because that's when we commit to scope is at the beginning, and we discourage change, we discourage variation, right? So there may be times, of course, where if we've got some parts that need to work with other parts, we discourage variation, because if there's variation, they won't work. So it's not that project management is bad. It's not that it's good either. It's just completely different. Scrum isn't bad. It isn't good either. It's just completely different. So we want to get down to what problems you're trying to solve. So yeah, project can be great, especially with the external work for hire clients too, like I mentioned. So hopefully I didn't gloss by that too fast, because that is still a project, and it can still work with traditional project development as long as it's relatively simple. But there are a lot of work for hire organizations who still call what they do projects, but they're using Scrum just to get earlier feedback, more transparency, and so on.
Okay, some of those questions were asked during your talk, so maybe you have already answered on them, but still I'm gonna read them so people don't feel ignored on that.
Perfect.
Yeah, I have one. I just lost it. It was few. Oh yeah, it's kind of seemed like related to some kind of addiction, because the question is, what was so hard about letting PMP certification to expire, apart from the pain and effort put into achieving in the first place?
The pain and effort. Yes, yes, because when I got mine, it was on PMBOK version 3, I believe. I don't even know what they're up to now. But that test was awful. And it was also a time when they experimented with raising the passing score. And they had offered people a chance to be grandfathered in to the old one. Oh, no, overachiever here, right? I had a study buddy. She and I said, we're going to take the new one because we want to be current on the current PMBOK. And we like that the bar is higher. We like that it's a higher passing score. Oh, God. I studied for, 2 to 3 nights a week for a month going into it. I barely passed, because if any of you have ever taken that project management test, it's like 4 hours, 200 questions. It's all word problems. It's not like filling in the blank, right? It's all word problems. I did pass. And then it's that fear factor, right? Where everybody has to get their PDUs, their project development units or professional development units, because if they let it lapse, they have to go take the test again. And we remember that pain. We remember that pain and suffering. So it's like, oh, better not let it lapse. And the reason I maintained it for as long as I did, just entering my PDUs the night before it expired, right? And paying my money, is I wanted my customers and my students to know that I got it. that I spoke their language, that I had worked that way for years. Because at that time, when I was getting all excited and catching the Scrum bug and meeting a lot of my Scrummy colleagues at gatherings and things like that, there were some people who were pretty critical of the project world. And they would say, I've never worked that way. Like it was some kind of badge of honor, or like it was something better. But then they were at a disadvantage because they couldn't answer a lot of the questions that I could. I could translate. I could speak the project language and then help people make that switch if they wanted to. Because like I said, these are choices. These are just different. And so for the longest time, I rationalized that as the reason I maintained those PDUs and paid them the money. And then I don't know, this year I just was like, this is stupid. I can always say I had it. Here's my experience. I've let it lapse. Why should I send these people money or fill out all their forms? No. And you guys, it was freeing. It was everything I thought it could be and more. So yeah, I don't pay them anymore.
All right, thank you. Yeah, that's kind of sunk cost into the
right,
into the investment. So we spent 5 million there, so we need to put another 5 million again. All right, so I get more kind of question coming in. So that's cool. So let's grab this one. Talking about the cross functionality and Scrum teams, do you think one person can be a part of a couple of Scrum teams as a part-time, or would it be a bad practice?
Well, I try not to use words like bad, good, because they get judgy. Will it be effective? More than likely not. It won't be effective because that person will experience context switching. And did you guys talk about context switching on your panel, Tomek?
Nope.
By any chance? Oh, okay. Nope. I thought I heard an equivalent of that idea, but like I said, my Polish not so good. They will lose their focus. We call that context switching, because every time you do that, every time you put a piece of work down and go to pick up another one, your brain has to go through that little ramping back up. You have to get acclimated to the work, even if you had been doing the work. You have to say, oh, where did I leave off? And there's a loss. There's a real loss that is experienced. The other thing that happens to that person, not only the loss of productivity in the context switch, they become the bottleneck, right? And you'll hear people start to blame them. Well, we needed Tomek. Where the heck was he? Oh, well, he was helping Team A. Well, why is Team A stuff more important than ours, right? So you not only become kind of the bottleneck, you also become the scapegoat. So a better choice, right? There, I'm going to key off that word bad. I'm going to say better, a more effective choice might be to have that person teach. Why are they so special? How did they get so good? By actually doing it. That's the only way we all get better at something. So a better use of that person's time might be, okay, if they're not going to be on this team forever, have them come on over and spend time with us. Teach us what you're doing so that we can fend for ourselves. And I get that when people are, talking about how special they are and how they're unique, their craft is. I always like to ask them, what's the one thing you should be able to do if you're so special at your craft? Teach someone else. And you're talking to somebody who has taught English majors, sociology majors, psychology majors, how to be database administrators. So it's not that we can't learn. If we think that we can't learn, that defies being human. Of course we can learn. It gets down to, do we want to learn, but we don't know how yet? Or are the people saying, I don't want to? Because that's a people problem. Or is the organization making that choice for you, right? Where they won't let you teach other people or let people learn new things, right? So hopefully that addressed that. I mean, you can do whatever you're going to do. These are just choices. Will it be effective or not? I don't know. Try it. Let's run the experiment and see what happens.
Yeah, that might be one of the differences between the resources and people, because my coffee machine still don't know how to do washing, but people can learn.
Want that. You wouldn't want your coffee machine to do the washing. Ooh.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm still trying. All right, moving to the next question. About the fixed price. So how to handle fixed price and scope projects, my favorite one, and I'm talking about not learning basically, like system implementation and new feature request, having product approach. Is it even possible?
So if I hear you correctly, you're talking about fixed price?
Fixed price, fixed scope, I guess, fixed time.
Yeah, because, this is our old friend, the iron triangle, right? Where we fix scope as an all or nothing. And then we guess at the time and we guess at the money. And I don't know about you, but as a card carrying project manager, I would turn in everybody's guesses. And before we even started work, they would say, go reestimate. What do you mean go reestimate? Well, it's too high. What do you mean too high? How would they know it's too high unless they already had a number, right? So if they don't like being honest, they're not going to like any of this stuff in our companies. So now let's flip it the other way. If we flip the triangle the other way, which is what Scrum does, we've got only so much money, only so much time. We have to be willing to flex on scope. We have to be willing to look at scope. Now, before, some people go, oh, but we need it all. We get real honest about a nice to have versus a have to have. So for example, kitchen remodel, that is still with me. For first words out of the contractor's mouth. What's the budget? Oh, there's a budget. Trust me. Here's how much money we have. Well, what's your timeline? Well, that's kind of flexible, but we have all the stuff we want in the kitchen, which is not negotiable. Need a sink, need an oven, need a stove. Okay, but now let's get down to what we mean by an oven. Do you need a convection oven? Do you need a regular oven? How fancy does it need to be? Does it need to be stainless steel? Does it not need to be stainless steel? Oh, I want it to be stainless steel. Oh, that's gonna cost you. So you're gonna need to cut scope somewhere else, or you're gonna need to compromise somewhere else, or pony up more cash. Or countertops, right? I need a countertop. I want it to be granite. Well, here's what that's gonna cost, because it's got to be machined. We got to make this fancy edge. We got to polish it. Oh, well, maybe I'll look at quartz. God forbid laminate. I still get a countertop. So when you talk about fixed scope, we got to get real honest about, are there any trade-offs within the scope item itself? And when you start pricing by sprints, which is our flip triangle here, I'm going to draw some money here. And then time, you can get down to what every single sprint costs, right? You know exactly how much your people cost. People cost money. And if you dedicate them to a Scrum team, that's 5th grade math to figure out, what your people cost is. You know how long your sprint is, whether it's 2 weeks or 3 weeks or whatever. Now we can figure out how many sprints it's going to take. And if we are iterating on the scope, money has this weird way in your organizations of following value. If you continue to actually deliver, I hear that all the time, right? That the team continued to get funded. One of my teammates used to work at a medical device company before he joined us at this organization. And he said he would have those arguments all the time, right? Here's the scope. Here's all the money we're going to give you. He said they would negotiate on the nice to haves versus the have to haves med device, right? Because there's regulatory compliance and the whole deal. But they knew how much work could fit into a sprint after their first couple of sprints. So they would say, for that price, we can only deliver this much. But then they would really deliver it. And then he said they would come back to him and go, we found more money. we found another $40,000. What? Like you tripped on it in the hall? I mean, so money has this way of following value too, if you're delivering. So you can do that. You can negotiate with the iron triangle here. We just look at it a different way.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons for this question is that there is a long list of companies who still believe that the fixed price, fixed contract is, pushing the risk out of the table instead of adding the risk into the contract, in fact.
Well, and that brings up a whole other can of worms. Because if the contract is written the old way and we're trying to work the new way, we got trouble.
And this is exactly the moment you try to avoid any feedback from the customer. So you don't change the scope, right? Okay, I'm gonna move to the next question, which is an advice on collaborating with project managers, PMOs, when transitioning to product paradigm way of working. So basically, how do we handle project manager? How do we handle PMO? What do we do with them?
What do we do with them? So the reality is there is no project management office in a Scrum adoption. And people get all upset, right? Heart palpitations, blood pressure goes up. Nobody's saying anybody's out of work. Nobody's saying that. Job security, not role security. So we have to make sure organizations understand this is about doing work differently. Change, right? Definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting it to somehow be different. So I ask a lot of questions about that. Now, I'm at a different place than I was at the beginning of my Scrum journey. Now, if they're not willing to restructure or if they're not willing to educate the people working in the project management office, I step away. I don't take those engagements because it's just not worth the pain. Because in any Scrum adoption or large scale Scrum adoption that I've been a part of, the project management office goes away. People aren't wandering the streets looking for work. They're doing the work differently. They're doing different things in the organization. And so that's the reality for the leaders, that this means change. Now, if they say, that's not going to happen overnight, what can we do? Well, I'm a big fan of data, former database girl here. I encourage people to start quantifying how much time is being wasted by confusing the people doing the work. Because Scrum isn't something you do in addition to work. It becomes the way you now do work. Because if we're going to do the project management stuff and the Scrummy stuff, that's the wrong conjunction. Why are we trying to do the same work two different ways? We could do the work project management way, or we could do it using Scrum. Because when I've quantified what gets lost in organizations, especially when we get asked to do assessments, it's somewhere around 2.5 hours per person per day that's involved, either arguing about the way to do work, doing rework, right? Or they're just confused as hell and they're fighting with each other. They just don't know what to do. So why do they want to do it would be my first thing. Second thing would be not only quantifying with data, like I just mentioned. Third thing would be translate it for them, right? So sometimes you get further by doing that. If you have pets, sometimes if you have to give them medicine, you put it in a piece of cheese, right? Or you put it in something else. So if you're going to take that approach, more of a practical place to start and a slower boil, we may have to perform those translations and not use some of the Scrummy terms. We may have to show them how we can still account for time, scope, budget. We just do it in a different way. But we may not even say things like burn down chart, sprint review. We may not even say, the Scrummy lingo. We may just figure out how to make that translation. But the reality is this is working differently. So if they're going to keep the old way and try the new way, there's going to be some of that confusion and delay.
All right, we have 2 more minutes. So I'm gonna close with one more question. In fact, 2 more questions because they're kind of correlated.
Okay.
And one is saying how to ask your customer what they consider a product as a product, and the second related to this one was somewhere here, but I lost it. Was about the do you have an example of a definition of product? So if you can share,
Yeah, ask them what they're paying for. So if I walk into the Verizon store, which is across the street from our building, I see a couple products. I see this phone, right? I don't have an iPhone. I'm not cool. This is a Motorola. So this is a product. I got this new product in December. I got a new phone in December. See, no cracks on the screen yet. The other thing we talked about in that store is my plan, right? The service that I pay for. So what am I paying for? Talk time, texting, data. That's the service I'm getting because I'm paying for that. So things can be physically a product. This could physically be a product, right? I'm paying for this, but it could also be something that's more abstract, like healthcare, life insurance, car insurance. I'm paying for that coverage. So I see that as the product. As the paying customer, that's what I see as the product. So hopefully that helped. Those last 2.
Thank you. And I'm going to add that there is some case studies on the Less.Works website as well. Mm-hmm. So we can this one. So that's 6 p.m. here. Not sure what is there in Minneapolis.
It is 11 a.m.
Okay. So it's perfectly a great time for us to close and let people try to catch some sun here. That's 18 degrees, which is, I have no idea how much it's in Fahrenheit, by the way. I'm just gonna do some advertising here. Angela will be running a course as well for a Polish audience. So if you are interested, then you can contact us for more details.